Hey GBA fans, welcome back to the weekly recap. This is week 5 of the GBA D-League season number 3. I am your host, choice CJ, and I am joined by my co-host, Zilix. Say hello.
Sorry GBA fans, Zilix here.
And as I mentioned at the end of last week's video, we are now more than halfway through the season. So although there are still a lot of games left to be played, the standings are really starting to solidify, and to show you a little bit of the action this week, we're going to pass it over to Zilix, and he's going to get us into game 1.
First up, we have Gregulator and the Los Angeles Cofable versus Jolt and the Toronto Star Raptors. Jolt brought a team of Mega Kangaskhan, Tornadus T, Deoncy, Seismitoad, Scolipede, and Mew, while Gregulator brought a team of Rotom-Wash, Zygarde, Celesteela, Nihilego, Mega Gallade, and Sneasel. The lead is the Scolipede and the Rotom-Wash. This gives Jolt a layer of spikes, while Greg Volt switches to his Zygarde. Greg reveals that he's a bit of a bulkier set on his Zygarde, going for a Dragon Tail, sending the incoming Mew into the Kangaskhan. The Celesteela comes in revealing that it is Rocky Helmet, making the Kangaskhan take some chip damage as it goes for an Ice Punch. The Celesteela is then able to go for a Toxic on the incoming Seismitoad, and on the following turn, the Seismitoad gets up its rocks and Celesteela Leech Seeds to get some of that health back. The Scolipede comes back in to get another layer of spikes, but it does go down to Celesteela's Air Slash. A bit of switching happens until the point where Greg gets his Nihilego in to set up Stealth Rocks after taking quite a bit of damage from Jolt's Tornadus, and then he is able to knock it out with an Acrobatics. The Rotom comes in attempting to Volt Switch, but the Seismitoad comes in to stop that, and then doubles into the Kangaskhan, going for a Thunder Punch on the incoming Celesteela, getting a critical hit. Another Thunder Punch would be able to knock out the Celesteela, but Jolt believes that he needs his Kangaskhan later on in the match and goes into his Tornadus, taking a Leech Seed, allowing the Celesteela to heal up to the point where the Tornadus is not able to knock out the Celesteela, and then the Celesteela Toxics the Torn. So Jolt realizes that this was a pretty big misplay, as this will matter later on since he is forced to sacrifice his Kangaskhan. But this does give Jolt the opportunity to bring in Diancie, taking out the Celesteela after getting Toxic by it, and then takes a Hydro Pump from the Rotom, getting a Weakness Policy boost, which allows the Diancie to set up Trick Room. With the Weakness Policy, it is able to easily take out the incoming Zygarde, but it does go down to the poison damage. And because the Trick Room is still up, the Mew is able to come in and outspeed a Gallade to avoid a taunt. It burns the Mega Gallade. Then the Tornadus comes in, taking quite a lot of damage from rocks and poison, and the Rotom comes in on the Tornadus, and the Tornadus attacks the Rotom, going down to the Rotom's Rocky Helmet. The Mew then comes in to take out the Rotom. Greg then goes into his Gallade, taunts the Mew, and then the Mew takes out the Gallade, which allows the Sneasel to come in to set up a Swords Dance, and he is able to survive anything that the Mew can go for, as its best attack to hit it is Shadow Ball. And then the Sneasel is able to clean up the game with Knockoff, getting a very narrow 1-0 victory.
This game to me really highlights the strength of Celesteela. It's got such a good defensive typing, and it's not a Pokemon like Skarmory that you can just sort of sit in front of and not really worry about it. Celesteela has a lot of scary offensive options, and even its defensive options with Leech Seed and things like that. It means that you can't just sit in front of it while it clicks moves. So it really shined here, getting 3 kills, and I think it's one of the top mons in Draft League, and Greg utilized it quite well in this match.
Another interesting thing about the Celesteela was it was running a specially defensive set and took very few special defensive hits, but quite a lot of physical defensive hits from knockoffs and like Thunder Punch and Ice Punch from Kangaskhan, and it was able to take those hits even though it's not very physically defensive.
Yeah, definitely. It just speaks a lot about the natural bulk of Celesteela. It's a really great mon for sure.
Yep.
Moving on, we do have next our match between the Memphis Grizzlies, coached by Magic Activator, and the Texas Rangers, coached by HLD Productions, aka Randy. Randy brought his Nidoking, Meloetta, Hydreigon, Hawlucha, Mega Sizzler, and Tapu Koko. Meanwhile, Magic Activator brought Mienshao, Lando T, Melodic, Jolteon, Togekiss, and Arcanine. Randy's going to lead with Nidoking to try and get up rocks immediately, but it is going to take a Fake Out from Magic's Life Orb Mienshao. He U-turns on the second turn and brings in Melodic, and the Nidoking does go for that Stealth Rock. But Melodic's going to sit in here for a little bit and be able to take some hits. It easily takes the combination of Psyshock and T-Bolt from Meloetta. Is able to burn that with Scald and get it down to about 20% HP. Tapu Koko does come in on a predicted recover, but Randy does make the sort of obvious play, clicking T-Bolt. But Magic does have a good switch in, being the Assault Fist Jolteon, being immune to the electric type attacks, comes in and hits the Koko with HP Ground. It in return takes a Twinkle Tackle, but because of its Assault Vest, only takes about 50% damage. Randy in response is going to end up sacking off the Meloetta as the Jolteon goes for Volt Switch, bringing back in the Mienshao. Randy then decides to bring in the Nidoking, which does die to the combination of Fake Out plus Knockoff, so unfortunate for him, he can't even get any damage off on that Mienshao. But the nice thing about this for Randy is that his Koko can come back in and get off another kill, this time on the incoming Togekiss. Jolteon is going to force out that Koko. Scizor comes in, takes a Volt Switch, and Mienshao comes in once again. And Randy's actually going to go into Hawlucha this time on the high jump kick from Mienshao, get off the Electric Seed boost, and try and set up a substitute. Magic, though, anticipated this very well, brings in the Arcanine, lands an Intimidate, and as the Hawlucha goes for Swords Dance, the Arcanine does Roar, preventing a potentially bad situation from occurring. Melodic comes back in because the Hydreigon got roared in, and Hydreigon comes very close to killing the Melodic. I think the Melodic goes down to 16 HP from a Draco Meteor, but it's able to recover, and Hydreigon's forced out, and the Hawlucha gets sacked to the Scald. Koko scares out the Melodic, and Randy this time makes a good prediction. Instead of going for the T-Bolt in front of the Melodic, he clicks Dazzling Gleam, anticipating the Jolteon switch in, and that Jolteon does get killed off. Mienshao comes in. At this point, Mienshao and Koko are pretty much trading blow for blow. This time the Scizor is the sack. Koko comes back in. It kills the Arcanine, but not before taking an important E-Speed, which is going to put the Koko in range of a crit U-turn from the Scarflando that comes in the following turn. All that leaves is the Mienshao versus Hydreigon, and the Mienshao is able to easily kill with a combination of Fake Out plus U-turn, handing Magic Activator a nice 3-0 victory. So Magic on a little bit of a winning streak after a pretty tough start to the season, really applying a lot of pressure with that Mienshao. Randy, I think, as well, had played a good match, but I think Randy maybe going into his win conditions a little bit too early, and it ended up costing him dearly in this match.
Now, I may be Team Koko, but is this the rise of Magic Activator?
it may be. He's really...
Is this the beginning of something magic?
I mean, he's really... You know, I've criticized him and his team this season for the amount of fat that he has and the passive fat that he has, but teams have not figured out how to deal with his Milotic. His Milotic's been causing problems all season. The only person who's really dealt with it well was Aster with his sub Cresselia.
One might say that Magic got activated.
I like what you're thinking there. We'll have to talk to him, and we'll have to...
horrible puns.
No, it's good. I bet Magic will get on that train, absolutely. He's probably ready to be activated.
I would hope so. Alright, so let's take it over to our next match, which is Abe versus Papa C. Papa C brought a team of Gigalith, Excadrill, Weezing, Haxorus, Hoopa-Yu, and Manaphy, while Abe brought Jirachi, Kumo-o, Regular Rotom, Mamoswine, Serperior, and Mega Beedrill. Starting off, we have the Gigalith lead versus the Mamoswine. Both sides get up their rocks. Papa C brings in Weezing to check the Mamo, but Abe does predict that, so instead of going for an Earthquake, he goes for the Ice move, taking the Weezing down pretty low, but the Weezing is able to burn the Mamoswine, and then go for a Pain Split on the following turn. Abe, predicting the Pain Split, however, goes into his lowest HP Mon, being the Rotom, who then is able to burn the Weezing to negate the Black Sludge recovery. This goes on for a little bit till Papa C eventually brings out his Hoopa as Abe Volt Switches to his Jirachi. Papa C then brings out his Haxorus, and Abe U-turns into the Mamoswine, which does go down to Haxorus's low kick. Abe then sends in his Beedrill because if the Haxorus is Scarfed, then the Beedrill will be able to take the low kick, and if it is not Scarfed, then it'll be able to outspeed. So Beedrill, knowing that the Haxorus is likely to switch out, sets up a layer of Toxic Spikes, and then U-turns into Rotom, going down to the rocks because the Rotom was weakened before by the Weezing. The Kumo-o then comes in after the Rotom goes down, attempting to set up a sub, which Papa C is able to break, but Abe is using these turns to waste away the sand. Papacy is then able to take out the Komodo with the Gigalith, as Mega Beedrill returns to U-turn on the Weezing, taking it down. Excadrill then comes in on one of the final turns of Sand, if not the last turn of Sand, on the Jirachi, and it is able to take it out with an Earthquake, as Abe then goes into his Superior. Papacy goes into Haxorus because he knows he can live a Leaf Storm and then take it out with his Scarf. But it turns out the Superior is also Choice Scarfed, locks itself into Leaf Storm, and pretty much cleans up the rest of the match. He does miss one Leaf Storm, however, it doesn't matter because the turn he misses Leaf Storm, Papacy also missed his attack, and that gives Abe the 2-0 victory.
Yeah, that moment where the Superior missed Leaf Storm and the Hoopa missed the Gunk Shot was insane. I was laughing hysterically when I watched that. There is just no counter for Superior this game. You look at Papacy's team, and there's nothing really for +2 Leaf Storm. And so even though Abe sort of stumbled a few times in this game, like with the Mamoswine versus the Weezing, with the Komo-O versus the Gigalith, he was able to put all that behind him and get a nice 4 kills on that Superior.
Yeah, had that Superior not been Scarfed, we may have seen Papacy take it, but alas, it was Scarfed. He was able to hit all the Leaf Storms that mattered and able to get that victory.
Indeed. Moving on to our next match, we have a very interesting one that took place between the Montreal Hapsols, coached by Aster J, and the Rosa Raidenborg, coached by Donaki. Aster did bring his Metagross, Piloswine, Blastoise, Infernape, Quillfish, and Thundurus. Meanwhile, Dan brought his Frostlass, Mega Absol, Roserade, Darmanitan, Suicune, and Magearna. Right off the bat, things are looking bad for Aster, as Suicune is going to lead off versus the Blastoise and immediately start going for Calm Minds. Aster is a little flustered because he doesn't have great responses for this. He goes for a Toxic with his Blastoise. Luckily, it is fast, so if it was a sub Suicune, he was able to Toxic it before it had a chance to go for sub. And Thundy comes in as Suicune goes for a second Calm Mind, but Thundurus goes for U-turn, brings in the Nape. Aster was not expecting the Suicune to go for Scald. He was expecting Suicune to go for Rest, but in fact, the Suicune does go for Scald, immediately killing Nape, and the thing that could immediately do the most damage to the Suicune is now dead. Thundurus comes back in and repeatedly clicks T-Bolt, hoping for a crit. Eventually, Suicune's able to pull a Scald, do 95% damage to it, and land the burn, making sure that Thundurus goes down. Quillfish comes in, clicks Swords Dance, because that's about the only chance that Aster has to take down this Suicune. Unfortunately, Dan doesn't actually Sleep Talk on the turn that Quillfish SDs, so he might have had a chance to pull a Calm Mind or a Scald or something. But alas, P-Jab does come out. It does crit the Suicune, which puts it pretty low. But Suicune wakes up and Scalds and does about 60%. The Suicune is going to switch out because it is looking like it can still win if it can get up a rest. Frostlass switches in, takes 60% from the P-Jab, and is going to kill the Quillfish with Shadow Ball. Piloswine is going to quote-unquote revenge kill the Frostlass. I guess it's not really revenge kill if you're like 3 times slower, but it does get the kill with the EQ, and Curse Body disables that Earthquake, and the Suicune comes back in. So this is going to force out the Piloswine, and Blastoise comes in on Suicune's potential Scald, and it is important to note that it goes for Scald and not Rest. The Magearna switches in on Blastoise's Dark Pulse, and goes for a Calm Mind. This is very threatening to Aster, so he goes into his dedicated counter Metagross. Is able to get up a lot of damage with Earthquake. Not wanting to sack his Magearna, Dan goes into his Roserade, which does die to the combination of Earthquake plus Bullet Punch, so sacking Roserade instead of Magearna was his choice there. Absol revenges the Metagross with Dark Pulse. Piloswine, again, quote-unquote, revenges the Absol with Earthquake. And the Suicune comes back in. So this is familiar to the turn from before, where Suicune comes in after Piloswine gets a kill. Last time, the Piloswine switched out because its Earthquake was disabled from Curse Body. This time, it is not. And anticipating the Piloswine switch out, Dan is going to go for Calm Mind. But Piloswine stays in, clicks Earthquake, and knocks out Suicune. So this was traumatic. This was devastating for Dan. As played, Darmanitan is going to kill the Pile of Swine, but Blastoise, being still at about 60-70% HP, is able to easily take a Scarf Darmanitan Flare Blitz, kill with Scald, and the Magearna, being very weakened from earlier, also dies to a Scald. So after seemingly being defeated in the early game, Aster somehow brings it back and gets himself a 1-0 victory.
I don't know what to say.
Yeah, that's there's really not much else to say. And Dan, credit to him, he took responsibility for the loss. He knew that it was his game, and he kind of threw it away. So that's really all it comes down to. The Suicune was a great set, and unfortunately just couldn't execute.
Yeah, I think he recognizes the mistakes that were made, and hopefully, we'll see this in future weeks. Maybe he'll play a little bit more carefully on turns like that, where, maybe he'll think, okay, instead of just attack what's in front of me, what are my other options? We have seen careful playing from him before earlier in the season. Maybe he was distracted this game, or, had a different plan in mind and it just didn't come to how we imagined it would. But hopefully in the next couple weeks we'll be able to see a turnaround from a game like that.
I hope so too.
So in the final game, we had Leo 6-foot Hacks versus Jack Don Fanatic. Leo had a team of Donphan, Tapu Fini, Snorlax, Greninja, Mega Aerodactyl, and Reuniclus, while Don Fanatic had a team of Floatzel, Clefable, Electivire, Latias, Skuntank, and Dhelmise. The battle starts with Dhelmise versus Donphan. Usually not a favorable matchup for Donphan. However, due to Sturdy, the Donphan is able to survive the Power Whip and is able to 2-hit KO the Dhelmise with Gunk Shot. Don Fanatic then sends in his Floatzel to revenge kill, but Leo shows the Tapu Fini can come in pretty much for free, forcing the Clefable to take big damage from a Nature's Madness, then taunting the Clefable, preventing the Stealth Rocks from being set up. Don Fanatic then sends in his Skuntank to take the incoming Moonblast, while Leo goes into Snorlax, taking quite a bit of damage from Poison Jabs, but is able to retaliate with an Earthquake. However, the Skuntank does survive barely. Jack switches and gets his rocks up as Leo goes back into Donphan to knock out the Clefable with a Gunk Shot. Jack attempts to set up with his Latias, but then Leo goes for a Play Rough, really playing with fire with these not fully accurate moves, but he does hit them all, taking the Lottie very dangerously low, but the Lottie does knock out the Donphan with a Dragon Pulse. Greninja comes in to revenge, and it's not really looking good for Jack. He is still able to win if he can get his Scarfed Electivire in with some prior damage on a couple Mons. So this Skuntank comes in and goes down to the Reuniclus, allowing the Electivire to come in, Volt switching into the Floatzel, and it allows Floatzel to get a kill on the Snorlax. Unfortunately for Jack, Leo's Reuniclus is able to survive 2 Thunderbolts, barely, which kind of spells the end for him, as Reuniclus is carrying the knockoff, and without its Choice Scarf, he isn't able to outspeed the Greninja, and the combination of Tapu Fini and Greninja clean up the game in favor of Leo for a 3-0 victory.
Yeah, this was a pretty quick game. Jack's walls just got pretty much nuked right off the bat. That Dhelmise going down extremely early, Skuntank getting whittled down very early, and then he just doesn't quite have the offense to back it up, it seems like. It's unfortunate when you have to rely on Pokemon like Floatzel and Electivire for most of your offense. So Leo just, after a week 1 loss, rattling off 4 straight wins, he's looking very scary.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good for him. He's shown that, week 1 was not what the rest of the season was going to be like.
Exactly, and those of us who know Leo, and he's very popular in the community, know what to expect from him, so this probably comes as no surprise. Now we will quickly go through the standings. Again, we are more than halfway through the season at this point, and we do see at the top we have the Montreal Habsols, 5-0 record, plus 16 differential, only undefeated team in the league. And following him up, we do have the Durham Druddigons, the Toronto Staraptors, and the Texas Rangers. Leo and his Durham Druddigons do have a 4-1 record, while the Staraptors and Rangers are 3-2, both. Within striking distance of the playoff picture is Abe and the Newcastle Umbreon. They also have a 3-2 record, but they only have a +1 differential. Teams that are in the 2 and 3 group include the Rosa, the Los Angeles Clefable, and the Memphis Grizzlies. Behind them, we do have Don Fanatic and his Norwich Skitty, and in last place, we unfortunately have the New York Clinks with a 0-5 record, minus 18 differential. So as I said, there still are lots of games to be played, but at this point, I think there are a few teams that have really separated themselves in both directions. But these teams that are still in the middle could definitely make a name for themselves and force their way into playoff position as the season goes along.
Yeah, it only takes a couple wins for some of the teams that are currently not in the race, and then a couple losses for some of the teams that are, to really change up, what we're seeing in the middle.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's take a quick look at the league leaders. In the number 1 spot, we do have the number 1 overall pick in the draft being Tapu Koko. He's got 11 kills and 2 deaths. Randy really showing how to use that thing. It's been a great revenge killer for him all season. The number 2 spot is occupied by Cresselia with an 8-1 record. And number 3 is a newcomer to the top 3, being the Superior, fresh off of a 4-kill week. Rounding up the top 10, we do have Mega Absol at 6-3, Scolipede at 6-4, Celesteela at 6-4, Nihilego at 6-4, Diancie at 5-1, Suicune at 5-1, and finally Infernape at 5-1. So I think the biggest surprise on this list, Zilix, is the Diancie getting another 2 kills this week. And Jolt's having a lot of fun with Diancie, I think.
He mentioned that it was, in his eyes, an underrated offensive fairy. We normally see a defensive with, maybe some screens or other utility, but he has been running it offensively and doing well, so it's interesting to see indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that, we will be wrapping up this weekly recap. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys are ready for the second half of the GBA D-League season. And yeah, anything could happen, as we mentioned. Zilix, do you have any final words?
No, I think you just about covered it all.
Great. Well then, until the next time, we will catch you guys later. Make sure you check out the GBA channel for other great analyst videos like the power rankings, the fantasy, the transactions. And make sure you subscribe to all of our fantastic coaches. And until the next time, we will see you guys later.